What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This video we're going to continue on with the Photoshop playlist, breaking down every single Photoshop menu. We're on the layer menu right now, which is all these options. This might be a little bit of a longer video, just like all the other Photoshop menu videos. Before we get into it though, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, especially if these videos help you out and you learn something. Also comment down below if you got any questions. I'll be sure to get back to you. And with all that said, let's hop right into the video. So one thing to know with each menu, if you look at the name of it, so this is called the layer menu, that's what each of these commands has to do with. It has to do with the layer. So if we look in the layer panel, I'm selected this layer here, which is the chameleon layer, the picture. So everything we do in the layer menu, it's going to be corresponding with this layer. Okay, so let's start off with the new section, and obviously new layer. We click it, brings up this, it's going to add another layer. You can change the blend mode and the color and opacity here also, and use the previous layer as a clipping mask if you want. Click OK, and this is going to add a blank layer right here. If we come down to background from layer, it's just going to turn that layer, whatever layer we had selected, into a background layer that is locked. Just undo that, keep this layer selected here. We go to new group. You can name the group, add a color tag, and then you can change the blending mode and opacity. Pass through is a blending mode that's only used on groups. When you click OK, you can see in the layers panel we got a group. Now if we select multiple layers and then we come up here to new and click group from layers, same thing, it's got the same options as group. Click OK, and it's going to add whatever layers we had selected into the group. Next we got Artboard. This is obviously just adding an artboard. You can name it. Has some presets for some different phones and computers, screen sizes you can choose from, or you can add a custom width and height. Click OK, and then it adds another artboard. Next we got artboard from group. You're going to want to make sure that you have a group already made in your layers panel and have that group selected for this to be able to be clickable. You click it and it makes another artboard. Next we got artboard from layers. So same as group from layers, just whatever layers you select. If you select the layer, hold Control and select multiple layers, and you come over here and click artboard from layers. Brings this up, same commands you can change. Click it and adds another artboard with these layers on it. Frame from layers, same as all the rest. Whatever layers you have selected, when you click this, it's going to make a frame out of those layers. You get this little dialog box. You can name it and change the width and height. Click OK, and it adds a frame. I just had a blank layer when I did that, but you can see it adds a frame layer. And this is what the thumbnail looks like. It's got a little X through it. That's a frame. And we'll go over frames in another video. You don't really have to know them right now. Then after that we got convert to frame. It just converts whatever you have selected into the frame. Next we got layer via copy. So if I click that, it just copies whatever layer you had selected. Now for layer via cut, you're going to want to select something. So let's just select this chameleon, just a rough selection. right? And this is just making a layer with whatever you cut out of the last layer. It's going to make a new layer. For these next ones, copy CSS and copy SVG, you're going to have to make sure that your image is a raster image. So if it's a smart object, you can right click on it, come down to rasterize layer, and now you won't see that thumbnail. That means it's a pixel raster layer. Then you come up to layer, and then you can click these. Copy CSS. With this one, Photoshop generates code which you can paste into your code editor. And then copy SVG. If you only need the SVG code to paste into a HTML document, you can copy the code right here. Next, we got duplicate layer. Now, this is self-explanatory. You click it. You can put it to a new document if you want, and you can choose what artboard the duplicate goes to. Click OK. It just makes a copy, an exact duplicate of it. Next, we got the delete section. You can either delete whatever layer you have selected, or you can delete any layer that's hidden. If you don't know what hidden means, it just means if you have hit this eye next to the layer, it hides it. So that command would delete everything that's hidden. Now, quick export as PNG. When you click this, it's going to export as a PNG file, but you got to remember, it's only whatever layer you have selected is going to export. If I were to click a layer that is showing, but you can't see it because it's hidden behind another layer, when you export this, it's going to export what's shown on this layer. It has nothing to do with every other layer in the document. Export as, same thing. You're exporting a single layer, and you can just choose what file type and scale, width, format, whatever you want to change here. Then we got rename layer. I never click this because if you want to rename it, you just come to the layers panel, double click, and then you can change the name. So next we got layer style, and this is all your layer style and FX. I'm not going to go over every single one of these because I have a whole video on this, and you can check it out. I'm going to put the links in the description, and I'll put it up in the corner here. You can click on it. But what these are your FX. Now, I never click layer menu and then come down to layer style. I never click this because you can come down here to the layers panel and click this FX button right here. Or you can double click on a layer. Don't click on the name part, just double click off to the side of a layer, and it's going to open up the same box. All those three ways I showed you all brings you to this window. And then you got all your FX or layer styles. You got blending options here with your blend if sliders, which is something that you definitely want to learn how to use. And then you got stuff like bevel and emboss, inner shadow, outer glow, drop shadow, gradient overlay, color overlay. There's a lot of things to play around with in here. But this is your layer style FX. Next we got smart filter. So it's grayed out right now. In order to get this clickable, you're going to have to make sure you're selected on a smart object. If your image is not a smart object, right click on it and click convert to smart object, and it has to have a filter applied to it. So if you come up to the filter tab, say we just add some Gaussian blur, click OK. Now that we have a filter applied, we can come up to layer and go to smart filter, and then you got your options here. You can either disable the smart filter, which it just hides them. You can delete the filter mask, or you can disable the filter mask. Disabling it just puts an X through it. It just makes it so you can't see the mask. or you can clear the smart filters, which is pretty much the same as delete. It just removes all the filters from that smart object. Next section, we got new fill layer, and there's 3 of them you can choose from. You can either do a solid color, a gradient, or a pattern. Instead of using this, I like to just come down here to adjustments, and you got solid color, gradient, or pattern, and it adds it as an adjustment layer. After that, we got new adjustment layer, and same thing as this one. You don't have to click these because you can come down here to the layers panel, click on this. This is all your adjustment layers again, and you got all those options right here. And again, everybody, I'm going to be breaking down what each one of these do in the adjustments video, so be sure to check for that. After that, we got layer content options. This works with shapes, and all it does is it opens up a gradient fill window. So if we have a shape, let's just draw here. We got a shape layer, make sure it's selected. Come up to layer and go to layer content options. And this is all it is. You can add a gradient. Click OK. And then it just adds a gradient fill to your shape. Alright, so next section, this is all about masks. First one we got is a layer mask, and this means any mask that's in your layers panel, whether it be an adjustment layer, text, a regular smart object, or raster layer. Let's just add masks to some of these so you can see. There. Alright, so we got masks on all these. Then we come back to the layer mask section. Reveal all shows the contents of all your masks. Hide all will hide all the masks. Reveal selection and hide selection, the same thing, it's just for a selection of that mask though. Then you can also view it from transparency. After that, we got delete. It just deletes whatever layer you have selected that mask. And apply. It doesn't delete it, it just applies whatever changes you had on the mask onto the image. If you do apply, you can then add another mask if you want, and then do some separate changes. Just remember, when you apply it, it's going to burn it into the image. And then you got disable and unlink. And so the next section we got is vector masks, and this is the same as layer mask, except it's with vector shapes and vector layers. So stuff you draw with the pen tool is vector, stuff you do with shapes is vector, and then if you have masks on those, that would be called the vector mask. And also, they're gray, they're not white. You'll see them as gray masks. And it's got some of the same options. You can reveal all, hide all, you can show the current path, you can delete them, you can enable or unlink them. Clipping mask. This just clips whatever layer you have on top to the layer that's underneath it. So whatever layer you had selected is going to clip to the bottom one. Another way to do this is if you just hold Alt and hover in the line in between 2 layers and just click it. You can either apply it or take it off. And all it does is it clips the top image inside whatever image you have underneath. So whatever shows in this image won't show outside the boundaries of the image underneath it. Next, we got mask all objects. If you click it, it might take a second to load, and it just masks every object. Alright, so the next section we got is smart objects. You got 2 different kinds. You got an embedded smart object and a linked smart object. You'll probably understand what each smart object does best a little more after I explain all these. So convert to smart object. This is real simple. If you have a raster layer, pixel layer, you can convert it to a smart object. So say I have this layer selected here. Come and just convert it, and now it has the smart object thumbnail. This is a embedded smart object right here. A linked smart object, the thumbnail looks like this. Okay. Next we got new smart object via copy. This is just gonna make a copy of whatever layer you had selected and add it as a smart object. Reveal in Explorer shows where the file is located only for a linked smart object. So if I click this layer that's linked and I click Reveal in Explorer, it's going to show you where that file is located in your computer. Update modified content and update all modified content, pretty much the same thing. When you edit the contents of a linked or embedded smart object, you might have to update the modified content if it doesn't register. So this is just basically when you click it, it's saying update my source file with the changes that I made. After that, we got edit contents, and what this does is it edits the source file of a linked smart object or the base layer of an embedded smart object. You can either click this way, or you can double click on the thumbnail and it's going to open up a new document with your source file or base layer if you're working with embedded, and whatever changes you make to it, when you click File Save, it's going to change your source file or base layer. Reset transform is if you transformed your smart object and you want to reset back to how it started. Relink to file or relink to library graphic. These are the same thing pretty much, except one is you're relinking to a file on your computer, or you're relinking it to something that's in your library panel. And you'd relink if your smart object source file was lost. Replace contents. This replaces the source file of a linked smart object or replaces the base layer of an embedded smart object with a new source file. Export contents. This exports smart objects as a PSB file. That's also known as a smart object file. Embed linked. This changes linked smart objects into embedded smart objects. Embed all linked. Same thing. Instead of doing just what layer you had selected, it's going to change every linked smart object into an embedded smart object. Convert to linked is exactly the opposite of those. It turns an embedded smart object into a linked smart object. Convert to layers. This changes a smart object to a raster layer or a pixel layer. Then we got stack mode. So we got a bunch of different stack modes, but basically stack modes affect how the layers' pixels are blended together, but they blend the layers in a different way than blending modes do. An image stack is a smart object that contains 2 or more layers and has a stack mode applied to it. And last but not least, we got rasterize. Obviously, this just turns a smart object into a raster layer or pixel layer. Alright, next section. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it's a video layers, but let's just breeze through it. New video layer from file. This is just making obviously exactly what it says, making a new video layer from a file that you choose. New blank video layer. Just it's kind of like adding a blank layer. It's just a blank video layer. Insert blank frame. It just inserts one single blank frame. Duplicate frame just duplicates that single frame. And delete frame just deletes a single frame. And then the rest, we're not going to get into these right now because I'm not showing too much on video with Photoshop. But I'll make another video on just these specifically. After that, we got rasterize section. Now there's all types of different layers right here, and all this does is turn each one into a raster layer. So you can turn text or type into one, you can turn a shape into raster, you can turn just the fill content of a layer, a vector mask, smart object, video, 3D layer, or you can even rasterize just the layer style or FX. And then you can rasterize whatever layers selected or all layers. New layer-based slice. This just makes a slice cutout based on the dimensions of whatever layer is selected. Group and ungroup layers. Pretty self-explanatory. Same thing as what I showed earlier. If you select multiple layers, you can either group them or ungroup them. Then we got hide layers. Obviously, this just hides whatever layers you have selected. Same thing as clicking the eyeball right here. Arrange. This is going off of how the layers are stacked. So think about it as pieces of paper stacked. You can bring it to the front, move it forward one layer, move it backward one layer, or send it all the way to the back. You can also reverse it. Next, we got combined shapes. Now this works like Adobe Illustrator's Pathfinder panel, but in order to use it, you need to have 2 or more shapes selected. So let me just get one shape, 2 shapes. Let's select them both. Then we'll come back to combined shapes. You can either unite them into one single shape. You can subtract one shape from another. You can unite them for just where they overlap, which is like the middle part, or you can subtract the overlap part. Like I said, it's a lot like the Pathfinder panel in Adobe Illustrator. After that, we got align layers to Artboard. We can align it to the top. I got this group picture selected right now. You can see we can align it to the top, the center, bottom, left, right, horizontal centers. There's a couple different options. Distribute. This is kind of like align, but it's a little different. So align will put a picture to like the top, bottom, center. Distribute is how you align multiple images. So if you want even space in between each one, if you want them to be more towards the outside or inside, there's a lot of different ways to distribute them. Then we got lock layers. It's going to open this box. You can lock everything with transparency, everything that's a pixel image, position, prevent auto nest, or you can just do all. And that just locks them so you can't move them around or change them. Link layers and select link layers. For this, you have to have multiple selected. And this is not a linked smart object. When you click it, it links them in the layers panel together. So you can see it's got the link icon on the right side. So they're just locked together. Like if you move one, you're going to move them all. And then select link layers, it just selects every layer that you have linked. After you link them, also this changes to unlinked if you ever want to just unlink them. Alright, next section we got merge and flatten. So merge layers, you're going to want to select multiple layers with this one, and then you'll be able to click it. So this just merges them into one single layer. Merge visible will merge everything that has an eyeball next to it. So you don't have to select it. It just, however your image looks on the canvas right now, it's going to merge it into one layer. And then flatten image. So when you flatten image, it's going to smush everything into one background image that's locked. Last but not least, for the layer menu, guys, we got matting. So in order to use the matting options, you have to have a layered image with one of the visible layers active. So something that has an eye has to be active, and then you have to rasterize it. So you right click rasterize layer, and then you can come up here and click on matting, and it's got 4 options. You got color decontaminate, defringe, which helps you clean up little residual bits of color that have been left behind. You can also remove the black matte or the white matte. So that about does it for the layer menu. I know it was a really long video, so I appreciate you sticking with me if you stuck around to the end. If you got any questions, again, make sure to throw them in the comments below. Also, like the video if this helped you out. If you made it all the way to the end of this long video, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.